Welcome to another video. In today's video we're going to be working on the Cobra here, and we're going to be installing an air fuel ratio gauge. I don't know where it is, somewhere. Stay tuned.
Music bed.
Okay, so this is the gauge that we're going to be using. It's the AEM air fuel ratio. This is the part number here. So follow along as we install this. It does come with everything that you need. So it does come with a new or a different gauge. So you can put like a silver one instead of black. Has the O2 sensor. This is going to be the hardest part of this install because you have to drill a hole in your exhaust and put this bung in there, weld it on there, and put the O2 sensor, and then run your wiring to the gauge. And then really the other installation is pretty simple. We're only going to use the 2 wires. I already closed these off. If you have an AEM computer, you use these, or if you want to do data logging, but you have to buy a separate harness. So we're just going to use power and ground, which is really simple. We have a pod to put it on top of the steering wheel from Autometer, and these fit pretty well. You just have to drill little holes to snap it to the old one. And then we are going to replace the O2 sensor on one of the sides. I don't know which one it is, but you can watch a video where I did the ones on my Saline. It's pretty much the same thing. These ones are probably easier because it has long tube headers, so they're not way on top of the engine. The sensors are pretty low down there, so that'll make it easier to install, I think. Other than that, we're gonna be started following the instructions. It says to disconnect the battery, which we're gonna do that here in a moment. But first I'm gonna, I think, go underneath, find out where that sensor is gonna live so I can drill a hole and, you know, do some precision amateur welds on there and get started. All right, so this is the first step here. I drilled a hole in the pipe to put the bung, and I put on this sensor. That's an old sensor. That way when I weld, the little boogers from the weld, because I'm gonna have a bunch of boogers all over the place, that way they don't mess up the threads. And so I'm just gonna hold this in here. Remember, when you put this in there, it has to be in an angle, kind of pointing down a little bit. And so I'm gonna put this in there, weld it, and then I'll take this sensor off and put the AEM on there. I did do it here because the factory one is in this area on the other side, and what we learned from doing it on the other Mustang is that when we put the other sensor for the gauge right next to the factory one, it was stripping the computer. So we're doing this a little bit farther back, just that way it doesn't interfere with any readings. And I mean, it's only about 4 inches away from where we're gonna put it anyways, so probably a good idea. You can take, you know, your X pipe, H pipe off and weld this outside so it's easier to get to all around. I'm just gonna do it in here, but that would probably be best scenario. So I'll weld this in there and then we'll continue installation. Okay, so went ahead and got the sensor in here. Don't mind the welds. It's welded, so that's what counts. Got the sensor here and run it up there, and I'll show you here on the kind of the outside of the car where to push it through, because you need a pretty big hole to put the sensor or the end connector. So there's this rubber kind of grommet here where a harness goes in there, and the hole on the metal, it's really big. So, you know, like this one already has like a rubber line on the side. What I did is I cut a little slit on the downside and pushed the sensor through, and then just feed it to the bottom. On the inside, it's barely going through. It was long enough to just have the connector in there. So if you can kind of see, there's a connector right there, and that's where I'm gonna hook it up, the other harness that goes to the gauge. So potentially you can find a smaller hole and do the other harness, but you still need a pretty big you know, hole to get the harness through there and the connector in there. I'm not gonna put all this stuff back yet just because I need to connect that. But next, what you want to do is take the little light knob off. And so there's a little slit, turn it till you see the slit. And normally on one of these, you get a screwdriver, a small one like this one. And there's a little clip in there that you push back, or forward actually. You push it forward and then you can slide it out. This one, you can't even see the clip, it's kind of bent down. So I do have another knob somewhere in there that I'm gonna put back, but that's how you take it off. So you push it towards the dash and then just pull the knob out. You can also use like a little hook to do that as well. And then I'm gonna take this vessel off. So there's 2 screws up here. They're Torx, I think. What is it, like
it's a T20?
Let's see. Yep, T20. So we're gonna take those off there, 2 of them, and then it just clips off. That way we can get to this piece to put the gauge in here. So the gauge pod goes on top of this factory piece, and pretty much what you want to do is take this off, you know, drill the hole so you can put it in and out. You're probably gonna also have to drill a hole through this for the wires to go in there. And then also the ground, I'm gonna find a ground back here where there's metal. Key on power, you can find somewhere back here. Most of the time, I think the headlight switch might have key on power, but if not, you know, I'll search for something that's key on power down here. If not, you can also tap to a fuse. You have your fuse box here. You know, buy one of those tap fuse adapters, and you can tap it to there for the key on power. So multiple things. I'm gonna see where I find, because most of these are pretty much the same. I think on Junior's car, I just found a key on power from back here on the harness and tapped to it for all his gauges here on the pod. So we'll do the same thing here. Okay, so to take the cluster off, there's the 4 screws up here, same Torx T20, and then we're gonna pull this out. So you kind of gotta angle it, because the plugs are down here. So we gotta unplug it. So there's a plug right up here. Just feel where the clip is to unplug it. Same with the one over here. And then on the Cobras, if you're doing this on a Cobra, it does have the little rubber line that goes to the boost gauge. I'm thinking it just pulls off, but let me just double check here. So it does have a little nipple for the vacuum line here on the back. So you want to take the line off of that there. I think that's how Cobras are. I never had one. So anyway, so we just took this off. That way we have access here to your light switch. Because I think this is where I'm going to get power, or probably one of these that goes to the cluster. They should be key on power on one of these, and we just have to find out, because well, we could probably look at a wiring diagram. I do have a book, see if it shows it, but if not, just use a test light, see which wire has key on power, and then we can tap into it right back here and just run it to the gauge. Okay, so this is the 2 harnesses that come with the AEM gauge here. So one goes to the O2 sensor, which I ran right here where pretty much all the harnesses go for the car. Now these are protected, so But just be mindful where you run them, because remember, your steering wheel goes up and down, which that part is right in here, so just be careful. I ran it just right here on top, so when you go up and down, it's not really going to pinch the wires. This is going to go to the plug for the O2 sensor underneath. This is a really long wire, so we're just going to, loop it and zip tie it down there. I guess technically you could run this wire to the trunk and back and still have enough. So they should really make these in a way that you can actually, change. Like maybe put a plug about here and you can plug it in directly like to your gauge, and then, send you like an extra plug, and that way you have an extension if you need it. That way you don't have all of these extra, but that's just my 2 cents. If you have a really long, like a bus, maybe, I don't know, that you need that much wire. But that's how they all come. So, and then this other cable is the one that we're gonna hook up. So I ran it in the same spot, right here on the dash. I looped it back, and we're gonna hook this up to the power and the ground. So I'm gonna actually start checking these, and I'll show you here in a second, but this is the only 2 wires that we need, key on and ground. So technically speaking, this is metal, this metal bar back here, and this is bolted onto the frame of the car, so we can run the ground to one of these bolts that are bolted to this metal bar, and we don't have to tap to one of these wires. So I might do that just that way I don't tap to the harness for the ground, but for the key on power, you do have to tap somewhere or find the fuse. So.
All right, so we're here out of the car while Alex works on the wiring there. And the AEM gauges are nice. They come with 2 faceplates. And if you hit up Sticker Designs, as you can see here, I know many of y'all have seen them, you can get an overlay that says SBT and matches the color of the Cobra cluster. So you can put this on top of this. So obviously, it comes with white and black. So whichever plate you don't like, just in case you ruin it or something, I would do it on the one you don't like. That's Alex's theory right there. So we're gonna, it's got a like clear kind of protective film on it, so we're gonna take that off, get some alcohol, wipe it, and then we'll put this baby on. We'll squeegee it out, the random card or something, and then we'll see how it turns out. If I mess it up, then my brother can buy another.
Okay, so went ahead and connected the ground cable here to the metal piece on the dash here on the bracket, and then I tapped into this wire. This red and black is key on power. I just peeled a little bit of the insulator. I am gonna tape this really good. I did solder it. You can always use those connectors that you pinch and then you put a tap on it. I just don't like using those because sometimes they cut the wire. So I'm just gonna tape that really good and then put the cluster back in and just try to test out the gauge, make sure it works before I continue taking this apart. So what I'm gonna do now, got this taped up. I'm gonna put the dash back in, just that way it's in there. Remember the little port for the vacuum for the boost gauge has to go in there. Make sure that it's all the way in. And then both of the plugs have to be plugged in. So there's one here on the back. Make sure they click all the way in. And then there's one on this side over here. And then to put the cluster back in, you pretty much just have to angle it back in there. So that's all in there. I just gotta put the bolts on there. And get it in there. But before I do that, I am gonna connect the gauge. So let me get the gauge. I don't know. Oh, actually, we have it in here. Junior has it over here. So before we continue, because we do have to remove this, the cluster can be in there with, if you're gonna remove this, but I just want to make sure that everything is working before we start doing that. So Let's see. I believe this goes right in here. And the little one. So in theory, if we just turn the key on, the gauge should work. So that's pretty much all good to go. From now on, we're just gonna actually mount this. It looks nice. What's nice about this gauge is it actually connects in here. A lot of them, the wires come out of the gauge, and so you have to make sure to put the wires through this before you start running them, because if not, you know, you're not gonna be able to get the gauge in your pod because you can't unplug them. But this one doesn't plug right at the back, so that makes it easier. You can just keep your wires right in here and go from there. To take this pod off, so there's there's 4 holes, but this one, it's a hole that you push to take your cylinder out without having to remove this. So there's 3 bolts down here. They are Phillips head. And so you're gonna take those off. And you take the little, well, you don't have to take the lever off for the angle, but you take those 3 bolts off, and then you can remove this top part here. Actually, we do have to remove the key. So to remove the cylinder, you use this other little hole. Let's see here. Or you can pull it down and look at it, but there's a little area there. There's like a little hole on the housing, so you turn the key on. Actually, and you can pull this out. So pretty much what you're pushing on is this little pin. When the key is closed, this is pushed down, so you can't push it in. So that's what that little hole is. You have to remove this, set it aside. That way you can actually take this piece off. And just take your time. You can take it off that way. Like I said, you can do it with the cluster in there, but you can remove the cluster out of the way if you really want to. This little push button is going to be right there in the middle, so you just gotta take it out to the side. And then I see this little metal piece that's kind of sticking out here. Normally this is put under a different way. I think it's bended to the inside, and that's what makes the dinging noise when your key is on. Like right now, the car should be going ding, ding, ding. And that's because this is broken. It's not making a contact, I believe. So I'm not gonna mess with it right now, but you know, if you wanted to fix that, I believe we just have to flip it. I do have a steering column that I can take a look at over there, but we're not gonna mess with that right now. So this is your factory piece, and so this piece is just gonna go right on top of it like that. You know, if it's pretty close. So I believe there's little pins we have to drill. I think 4 spots just to kind of hold it in there. That's the only way, like that's the way it stays on there. And so we're gonna do that, and then we are gonna have to drill a hole on this factory one for the wires to go through. But since I put the wires right in here, like I said before, they're gonna be right on top, and they're gonna go right through there. They're not going to be in the way of nothing, you know, even when the steering wheel goes up and down. So, I'm going to go and just drill those holes for those pins, and then we'll come back and put it all back in there. So I went ahead and got the little rivets. You just drill, I don't know, I think it's like a 3/16 little holes, put them in there. If they do interfere on the bottom side, you can trim these off with some pliers, wire snips. But the other thing is with the gauge on this one, you know, gauges have the kind of the metal to hold them in place. There's not much room in here, but with this they fit really snug. So, you know, this gauge I can put in there. It's not gonna go nowhere. So that's how we did Junior's Roush. We're just gonna leave it that way. And so you can always kind of pull on this, pull the gauge off if you need to, do any you know, unplug it or anything like that. So before we install it, I'm gonna, oh, and I cut a hole here on the back to run the wires. So I'm gonna put the wires right through there, pull them out, and then just put this back in there. So just make sure to guide it in there. It's gonna be a little tight. And it's gonna be a little bit harder now because you have both of the plastic pieces in there. So it's not just the factory one, it's also the aftermarket piece in there. So just take your time. Make sure everything's lined up in here. And then same on the other side. Everything should snap together pretty good, like so. So the bolts now are just gonna hold it all together. At this point, since I have my ignition on, I'm just gonna put this back in there and just make sure that let's see here, it lines up, and then when you turn it back, that pin should go in there. It's gonna lock it in. So I'm just gonna put the 3 screws here on the bottom back on there, put the gauge in here. These wires are loose, they're not pinched or anything, and then tying up the cluster. We'll be ready to go on this one. Oh, that would suck. Okay, so I went ahead and bolted on the cluster. Got the gauge in here, and so, you know, like I said, you can pull it out in. Before I put the little trim panel here, I'm gonna just one more time make sure that with the key on, it's working. So there you go, everything is good. I also did put like a little piece of metal here on this headlight switch because it was broken, and so I just did like a little extender on the back so that way it's on there tight, it's not all loose. So that's fixed. Gonna get the trim panel back in, and that should be pretty simple. It's somewhere back here. This would be a great time if you need to, you know, clean it really nice, paint it, anything like that. You can do it while it's out. Now it's going to be a little bit harder to get it in there because of this big pod that's on the way now, so keep that in mind. Before, you could just kind of drop it in there, no problem. Now it's tighter, so we're just gonna kind of angle it in behind here, and this has a little bit of give. You know, these plastic panels, you just don't want to
snap it in half,
go too bonkers. And yeah, I mean, you know, take your time, make sure it's lined up, everything is good. You can tell even with the switch now it's more centered than before. And then there's the 2 bolts that went in there. They go right in here. I'm just gonna finish tying these. And that's pretty much, and then I'm gonna get the other headlight knob. So let me go grab that, and then I'll show you guys the final result.
All right, guys, as you can see, it's all wrapped up in here for now. Got the gauge, the overlay on there, matches the Cobra cluster really nicely. And just to test it out again, as you can see, the gauge works, resets this, does this thing. And then once you start it, it should read whatever it is. We still got a couple of things to do for some other videos, so we're not going to start it right now. But that's going to conclude this video. As always, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.